On our quest towards our destiny as a human species, humanity has arrived at perhaps the most pivotal inflection point we've ever faced. We can all feel that things have shifted, that things are not the same as they were. And what's strange is it feels like things are different in a new way. We can kind of all sense it. It's become increasingly apparent that what brought us to this place on our journey cannot and will not carry us forward to the future that we all desire. New inbreaking forces of technology accelerate us dramatically into our future. We can imagine that from this point, it is possible for us to go towards a future that is so much better than we could possibly imagine or ever have attained in the past. This moment, everything is on the line. As we look into our future, vastly different possibilities and potentials emerge. In the face of all the different interconnected and mutually reinforcing crises, which we sometimes refer to as the meta-crisis, it's easy for us to understand the pathway towards a future of death and destruction that's far worse than what any of us have experienced in our lifetimes. What's brought us to this point of the meta-crisis, we have to understand fundamentally as our way of being as a human species, the way that we structure ourselves, the way that we choose to be. The same systems and structure that got us into this mess can't get us out of it. While it's absolutely true that the heroes are on the front lines of every battle, the unfortunate reality is that right now we have so many amazing, heroic individuals, organizations, and solutions that are functionally competing for the attention and energy and resource flows that are actually required for us to succeed together. So what we've attempted to do the last 7 years is lay the groundwork for an omni-considerate joint venture for Worksite Earth. From those learnings in construction, we learned that when something big needs to be done that's too big for any one nation, too big for any one organization to do, a brand new clean structure has to be formed as an invitational platform for all the amazing people and groups around the world to participate in. That led to the creation of what we call Lionsberg. We're working to assemble a federation or a blended ecosystem of self-governing, sovereign, autonomous, worker-owned cooperatives, companies, for-profits, and nonprofit enterprises collaborating together towards our shared goals and values. The key of any federation is that out of many, we're becoming one without sacrificing our self-determination, our autonomy, or our self-governance. We set up Lionsberg as a commons that we could steward as a decentralized movement for the good of all current and future generations of life. Over the last 7 years, we were able to aggregate tens of millions of dollars of value in many different lifetime streams of work, from experts in legal, governance, science, technology, systems thinking. All of these different fields had to come together to actually create a starting point that was sound from the standpoint of international governance, legal compliance in each of the different nation states around the world, and that we could actually work to resource and fund the critical backbone infrastructure, technology, services, education, and support that the decentralized array of leaders and teams around the world will need to succeed. The structure's been set up very specifically to stack up and align responsibility and authority from the bottom up, not the top down. At the highest level, we're tackling shared planning systems, shared infrastructure, shared ideas of how we're going to move together through the 10-year grand strategy that we're embarking on. But all the action arises from the bottom up with self-governing, autonomous teams tackling quarterly quests that help progressively realize our shared goals and values. We've set a milestone to connect and empower the first 3% of the human population, roughly 250 million enlightened, capable individuals by 2026. That gives us about 30 months to go. While that may seem overwhelming, we're working with some of the brightest minds who have created some of the largest cultural events in human history, and we know we can easily accomplish that reach. We obviously can't really do anything, 250 million of us. So the basic framework revolves around sovereign, autonomous, small, specialized teams. The basic way that a federation works is it's structured to protect the sovereignty and autonomy and self-governance and self-determination of every individual, every small team, every organization, every neighborhood, and every bioregion. With that in mind, we've constructed what's set up as basically a pattern language that can be localized, adapted, and instantiated at any of those different levels. Now that we've created the legal governance, systems, and technological infrastructure, it gets a lot easier. We're now embarking on perhaps the simplest plan in human history, but also maybe the largest, exciting, and most profound attempt to create widespread planetary change by starting at the local level. What we're proposing is a global network of interoperable instantiation hubs that would range in size and scale to handle and decentralize these major technological and physical undertakings. We could imagine that at the geo-regional level, there might be 12 to 24 major hubs around the planet where we're handling the largest scale and most resource-intensive undertakings like chip manufacturing and spacefaring. Down at the bioregional level, we'll have bioregional networked hubs, financing hubs, farm hubs, different types of resources across those 150 to 200 bioregions of the world. Down at the eco-regional level, we'll have another 700 to 1,000 different hubs at a slightly smaller scale, all the way out to the local hubs that are serving and empowering communities of 10,000. This distributed array of instantiation hubs will ensure that each of those 50 million teams distributed and empowered around the world has everything that they need to succeed across all the different layers of society and economy. This is critical because unfortunately, over the last 50 to 100 years, a lot of the local food production capacity, economic production capacity, has been very systematically and intentionally strip-mined out of our local communities around the world. In a time of increasing fragility where the systems of the world are shaking, we simply cannot afford to take the risk of forgetting how to feed ourselves and locally produce the things we need to flourish. This decentralized array of hubs will ensure that the decentralized array of teams are optimally empowered to relocalize food production, permaculture, regenerative agriculture, local economy, additive manufacturing, AI, robotics, all of the most important technologies and tools to secure our future locally. All that's missing is the commitment and the conscious choice of those first few % of the population that can see what's happening, that can see this moment, who are humble and wise enough to understand that none of us can do this in isolation. As I've talked with different advisors and high net worth individuals and foundations around the world, I've discovered there's almost a universal frustration that they're not able to move more resources in service of the challenges and goals they see are necessary to meet this moment in history. On the other side, as I walk and find all these heroic solutionaries on the front lines, there's almost a universal frustration of being isolated and under-resourced and lacking the true systems and resources and relationships and support they need to really succeed in addressing the root causes of the challenges that they're facing. The only way out of this is if we rapidly get billions of dollars flowing against each one of the grand challenges and global goals. These resources need to be directed not to the government, not to any one organization, but to a whole ecosystem of talented, empowered teams voluntarily tackling the most difficult missions and quests that they can each and every quarter. If the average quarterly quest of those teams is even $10,000, that already represents $500 billion a quarter of coordinated, focused, measurable flow against the grand challenges and global goals that we've agreed to tackle together as a human species. The unity among all those efforts against a critical path. The long-term vision is nothing short than the refounding of our civilization. Really what we're talking about is working to facilitate a total shift of human consciousness over a 10-year period and truly inviting people into a cooperative new way of being together as a human species aboard planet Earth. This is maybe the most crucial moment in human civilization. And right now at hand, we have an immediately actionable plan and strategy to meet this moment in history, the greatest building project in history, instead of destroying one another. Because we're talking about building a federated array of value-producing entities, we've designed the system to be indefinitely self-sustaining into the future and not eternally dependent on philanthropic capital. But we do need to bring the initial resources in to get started. There's already over $500 billion a year of philanthropic capital in flow. So as an early target over the next 24 months, we're talking about as rapidly as possible redirecting the first 1% of that, $5 billion a year, and then 10% of that, $50 billion a year, towards a strategy and plan that's big enough that it might actually work. Over these next few quarters, each of us, individually and collectively, across all of our localities, tribes, and nations, are going to be making key decisions that are going to influence our grandchildren and great-grandchildren and their great-grandchildren for generations and generations to come. If there was ever a moment for unity, if there was ever a moment to look at the unfolding meta-crisis and all the chaos and conflict across the world and realize that it's time to pull together, to transcend the lines that have divided us in the past, and to truly follow that spiritual impulse that impels us to unity through love, this is it. Welcome to the adventure and opportunity of a lifetime.